Welcome back to the Center in the City podcast. I am so happy you are here, and I am so grateful to be back. To be honest, when I took this podcast recording break, I didn't know if I was coming back. And after reflecting and some of the things that we're going to talk about today on this episode, I am really happy to be sitting here in my office recording this episode and many more to come. Today we're talking about stamina. And when I say the word stamina, I'm really talking about how do we maintain energy from a physiological perspective, but also from an emotional and mental and soulful perspective as well. Part of having stamina is resilience building. We need to have enough resiliency to keep going. And sometimes when life throws you a lot of things, it can feel really hard to find the stamina. So I specifically wanted to zoom into the stamina portion of the resiliency conversation and discuss how we can come back to our center when we find stamina, how stamina is so important. So let's settle in and let's get centered. So the working definition of stamina is this ability for prolonged physical or mental effort. And, when you talk to people who are going through things in life, there's this kind of conversation of there's no rest for the weary, or this feeling like we never have time off, or this feeling like I can never get a break, or even if I go on vacation, I'm never really feeling restored. People are constantly feeling on. And I think there's many factors here. I think being in a very tech-heavy world where things are moving at a faster speed than our nervous system knows what to do. We're always plugged in. We're seeing these constant updates in real time. We can be reached anywhere at any time. Life is very fast and full. And if we're not conscious, we can fill every moment with something, whether that's scrolling on our phone or listening to podcasts like this, or listening to music, or just super plugged into something. So unless we're conscious of the ways that we're resting, it makes complete sense that we're always feeling on in one way or another. Now, I think there's also another element to this piece around stamina in our culture, because I think a lot of us have these beliefs that life is chunks of destinations. There are milestones to hit, and when you hit those milestones, it's going to look like this, and then life will look a little different and be like this. And so I think we have these mental maps of how things quote unquote should go. And when we constantly think about these should statements of how things should go at different milestones, right? Like, oh, I should be married at the age of 30, or I should have kids at this age, or I should be at this stage in my career, or I should be able to own a home, or I should be able to afford X, Y, and Z. I should have this role in my career. Whatever it is, right? When we create these should statements and assumptions and these mileposts, it can get very exhausting because we're creating these destination places instead of reminding ourselves that we are human beings on a journey of life, that there is no destination, that life in each moment that we are living is where we are supposed to be. It is a full journey. And when you think about it, the true destination is death. That is where we're all headed. No matter what type of supplements you take or what type of anti-aging cream you are using, we are all headed in that direction. And I know that sounds morbid, but it is one of the facts of life. And I think when we can wrap our head around that and recognize that while life can be this expansive journey, even if we have no idea when our journey might be over, but if life can be this expansive journey, can it take some of the pressure off of feeling like we need to hit these destination milestones? Because in reality, they're not destinations. There are certain goals. There's certain things that we want to achieve. And it's really beautiful and amazing to have individual goals, to have things that matter to us, to be able as humans to work towards something is really amazing. And it's also a very privileged place to be because there are other people in the world who aren't even able to work towards certain goals because they're just working on surviving and they don't have the capacity to think about bigger, brighter goals. So circling us back to stamina, we need, as humans in this busy modern day world, need stamina for the journey of life. So today I want to share with you 3 different ways we can think about building stamina in our life so that we can have more resiliency to keep going, to keep being on this journey, to keep showing up for the things that we care about. And as we think about the journey, I think one of the things that can come up, especially living in a very capitalistic world, is that we think we need to go super fast, because if I don't go super fast on this journey, then somebody else is going to go faster. And if somebody else goes faster, there's not going to be space for me. And I think that type of competitive scarcity mind isn't helpful in the long run of life. So to have stamina for this journey, I want to welcome us to practice these 3 things. The first is taking breaks. Now, taking breaks can mean a lot of things. It means rest, right? Taking recovery time to rest the body, rest the mind from all of the doing, the thinking. But it also can mean like checking in with yourself, just like what I practice with podcasting. Like if I podcast nonstop every week, all year long, that would burn me out real quick. And so taking the time to rest, to check in with myself and ask, like, is this still serving me, right? How often do we do things in life that are not serving us still? And so we need sometimes to take these breaks to step out of our normal routines or patternings and look at ourselves and our choices, how we're spending our time from different angles, and to recognize like, is this still serving me? Is this something I want to be doing? Because just because I've been doing it for so long, i.e. podcasting since 2017, just because I've been doing it, does that mean I still want to do it? Part of taking breaks is also about recalibrating. It's checking in, like, where do I want to still be going? Getting oriented. If we can imagine this whole episode, some imagery we can use is we are on a long hike. And so when we are on a long hike, we're not going nonstop. We take breaks to hydrate, to rest our feet, to have some snacks, to maybe check in what needs to be adjusted from our backpack to our socks to do we need to put on another layer? And then even asking, like, recalibrating, like, checking the map, checking our compass. Where are we still going? Do we feel like we're in alignment to where we're still going? Do we still want to go in that direction? And really having that moment, because when we can check in, it allows us to then feel like, okay, I'm right where I want to be. And this is where I'm wanting to go. And we have some sense of purpose and direction that we can then use as fuel for our stamina. This next practice 2 for maintaining stamina, is to make sure that we're fueling up. And I don't just mean this from a nutritionist perspective, like that we're having the nourishment we need from from food going into our bodies to give us energy. That is so important. And that's like, yes, always a given. But I want to even expand that more, because a lot of the times, and especially in these days where loneliness is at this huge height, and if you're working remotely or hybrid, you might feel a sense of disconnection from others. And that also might be heightened by this, again, technological world that we're in, where people constantly have their phones in their faces, and that sense of disconnection can be really present. So fueling up with the things and people and places that really give you energy. There have been many times this last year and a half where I've been working through some personal and interpersonal stuff, and my energy has felt so low. My stamina has felt so low to keep going, to keep showing up. And one of the things that gives me so much strength, and that we really need to remember in this world, is that we aren't alone. We have our friends, we have our community, we have our family members, we have those people in life, even if it's just one person, that we can lean on, that we can connect to, that help fuel us from the inside out. I was just on the East Coast, and I felt this in such a deep way, where I was able to spend time with some of my friends from when I was 2 and 3, and I was able to see my 7th grade teacher, and I was able to spend time with my nephews and my brother, and I was able to be in a neighborhood that raised me and go to the spots that I love to have food in, or go explore museums that, like the Met and the Natural History Museum, like these really iconic museums that I took for granted when I was younger. But just like being back in that nostalgia was so fueling for me and reminded me of my roots. And a lot of spiritual practices, they talk about connecting to your ancestors, connecting to your roots, connecting to your root chakra. For those that don't know, that's our chakra at the base of our tailbone, this energetic place that's really tied to family and safety and security. And so connecting back to these places can be so healing and restoring, because sometimes we need to remember where we've come from to also have the energy capacity to think about where we're going. There's some practices that I've done with myself on my own journey, and I also incorporate into my coaching sessions, of connecting to both your inner child and also this older, wiser adult inside of you, your future self, like way off in the distance. And so that you get these perspectives of where you came from and also where you're going, and how that wisdom of connecting to those different people in you can give you such perspective that can help you really fuel up and not feel alone on the journey, to remember that they're inside of you at all time. Because time is kind of this, when we think about time on a timeline, we think about it as very horizontal. That's how our human minds have wrapped our head around it. But time can also be this multidimensional space. And so holding that there are these pieces of you from different ages and places inside of you at all time can be really helpful too, to remember you are not alone on this journey. And the third practice to offer us in maintaining stamina is to practice savoring the good. I've talked about this before on the podcast, in my newsletters, and in the Center in the City platform. I'll link the specific guided meditation practice I'm referring to. And this idea of savoring the good comes from Dr. Rick Hansen, and it's all about a slowing down enough to recognize the beauty, the goodness, the sweetness of life that is typically all around us. And sometimes we get wrapped up again in the doing, or we have blinders on, or life is just feeling really hard or challenging. It can be difficult to find the good. But when we find it, if it's just as simple as a delicious cup of coffee, or seeing the fall trees and the colors that are shifting on the leaves, or maybe it's noticing how the light is coming in and bouncing off the wall, that we can pause and just savor it. We can let it into our nervous systems and remember that there is goodness. There's goodness, there's sweetness to be enjoyed, there's nectar. This particular practice has been a game changer for me in my life, especially in times when my stamina, mental, emotional, soulful, spiritual stamina has been challenged. It's like to keep looking for the good, to keep not only looking for the good, but taking that moment to savor the good, to really feel it. And when we can feel it in our bodies, it starts to widen our capacity. It starts to help us be able to have more capacity for the full spectrum of life. So we need this juice to keep us going, to give us stamina. Because again, life is this journey. It is not destinations. When I think of life and I think about this journey that we're on, we never know when it's going to be over, when it's our time to close our eyes and take our final breath. And so it's our responsibility to live life fully. And sometimes this idea of living life fully can put personally so much pressure on myself that I need to do it all, and I need to do it all right now, and it all needs to be perfect, and everything I've ever wanted to do needs to happen now, and it needs to be neat, and it's just not how life works. And so taking this wider lens with life, that it is this journey, reminds me that, oh yeah, I want to have some stamina for the journey, that I get to mind my pace, that not every moment needs to be a sprint. And there's a time and a place when we need a sprint, when we need to push ourselves outside our comfort zones, when we need to get something done, when we need to reach new heights, when we need to recognize we can achieve that thing, when we get to the other side of that incline, so to say, if we're going back to our hike mountain analogy. But there's also time to walk at a steady pace, to walk even at a slower pace. And the key here is that nobody else can tell you what pace to be walking this life. This is completely up to you. And I know you might feel pressured because you might look to the left and the right of you, and you might see other people walking at different paces, and the comparison is going to come in, and you're going to think you should be walking faster or you should be doing this. But you, and only you, get to discern at what pace you want to be walking at life in this moment. And the cool thing is that you also can turn up the dial and down the dial whenever you would like, because you get to control your own stamina. You get to support yourself, finding that rhythm that works for you to enjoy the journey of life. And if you're like, okay, I'm on this journey, but I don't really know where I'm going, and I just feel my legs moving, and I'm kind of spiraling because I don't really know where I'm going. I'm doing the thing. I'm waking up. I'm going to my work. I'm making money. I'm dating. When you're in it, but you're like, where am I going? A really helpful question that you can ask yourself is, if I were to die, what would I want to accomplish and experience and feel before I took my last breath here on earth? What's going to support you feeling fulfilled? But you fulfilled, not what's going to make your parents happy or what's going to make Instagram video go viral. What's going to make you feel fulfilled? And focus on that. And think about how your values get to help you live that every day. Make that the priority. And I just want to be clear that building stamina, building this skill, this capacity to recognize our stamina, to adjust our stamina is a skill. And the sooner that you can really work on managing your stamina, I think the better you will be in the long run of life, because life is complicated. It is not always a walk in the park. And we need the stamina to be able to keep showing up, to keep doing the things that matter to us, to keep having impact in the world. So as we are just now in the fourth quarter of 2024, we're just beginning this last quote unquote chunk of the year. Again, this milestone of the New Year's. However, life is a journey, and we can use this time-bound space of the quarter to think about, okay, what do I want to focus on? What do I want my goal or goals to be for this last quarter? What do I want to prioritize? And so it can be helpful for you to reflect on. And if you created a power intention with me in the beginning of this year, maybe you want to go back to it and reflect, how am I living this power intention? How is this power intention informing what I want to prioritize over the next few months? And may you continue to remember that this time-bound space of the quarter is just a figment of our imagination. It is some structure of time, but that life continues after this. And so you get to keep living. You don't need to burn yourself out in this last quarter. So think about where you are in your stamina tank. And maybe out of the 1, 2, or 3 practices that I offered you today, think about what's one practice that you want to lean into to support you managing your stamina so that you can keep going after what's important to you. What helps you live life from your center? What helps you live life being centered in whatever city or place and space you're in? Thanks so much for listening to today's solo episode. I'd love to hear what resonates for you. Send me a message on Instagram at OneWade. Let's keep this conversation going of maintaining stamina, practicing stamina. It is for sure a practice. And if you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to rate and review this podcast and share it with somebody in your community. It helps so much to get this podcast into other people's ears, hearts, and minds. As always, thank you for being here. And until next time, stay centered.